And Obama's saying he's going to use the federal bureaucracy to implement by piecemeal many parts of these global treaties. Schwarzenegger is banning and taxing television sets over their carbon footprint. So it appears that they're trying to force this, even if they can't do it legislatively. Lord Christopher Monckton is our guest. He is the 3rd Viscount Monckton of Brenchley. We're going to come right back and get into the master plan. Scienceandpublicpolicy.org. Scienceandpublicpolicy.org. One word is the website, Lord Christopher Monckton's website. He's with us for another 26 minutes. He's going to be reporting here for us, coming on when he's in Copenhagen. We're lining that up. So very important that he be there with his measured, focused, like a laser beam intellect, exposing these people. He's been fighting them for decades. And, of course, laying out that their science was fraud, because scientists would get the raw data and it didn't match what this pet university used by the UN to put out this fraud was saying. But, sir, I mean, you're someone who I know doesn't, want the credit, but you deserve the credit, literally setting bushfires in the minds of men, as Thomas Jefferson said, here in the United States and Canada with your tour. Perfect fate or providence building up to these wonderful leakers, probably not hackers, leakers, inside this head climatology bureau at East Anglia. I mean, just amazing. Can you speak to that? And then, number two, to the mindset of Maurice Strong. I talked to you during a break. You said you had read Ecoscience and their calls for world population reduction, drugging the water, just a planetary regime to carry out the police state and then the world population reduction. Lord Monckton.
Let's go back to the book that John Holdren, who is the current so-called science czar, of course we would call him a commissar, that's what he is, he's a communist, this guy, and an openly admitted communist, and he's the science advisor to the President of the United States, can you believe it? He, with Paul Ehrlich, wrote a book 30 years ago in which he said that because of humankind's influence on the climate, there was going to be rapid global cooling in the next 10 years, he said. And this was going to cause so much ice to pile up on Antarctica that it would fall off and fall into the water and cause a tidal wave bigger than any ever seen in human history. And I'm actually quoting from the book when I say that. That was his view 30 years ago. Now, with seamless mendacity, he now says that what we're facing is global warming, also from human influence on the climate. And actually, there is no more basis whatsoever for saying that there's going to be global warming than there is global cooling. I checked that with Professor Dick Lindzen of MIT, who knows more about the atmosphere than anyone and doesn't believe a word of either the global cooling or the global warming story. And he says, if you want to take a bet, he said it's 50-50 whether it will be warmer than today or cooler than today in 50 years' time. He said there's no way you can tell. And all these people telling us that if we don't clean up our act, it's somehow going to become warmer when they were previously telling us it was going to become cooler. How can anyone like Holdren stand up with a straight face and expect anyone to believe him? But they do, because they know that the mainstream media are now so left-wing, so captured by the desire to set up this communistic world government, to do away with democracy forever by stealth, using the excuse of saving the planet, that they will drift along with it. If you take people like Sir Maurice Strong, what's in it for him? He's made a lot of money out of it over the years. In fact, he was done under the UN World Oil for Food program at one stage for having put his fingers in the till. These are the people now who are lording it over us. And in the British understanding of the term aristocracy, it comes from the Greek word rule by the best, hoi aristoi, the best. Now we have what I call a kakistocracy of blackguards. It's ruled by the worst, people who have absolutely no moral principle. They don't care how many people they kill with their policies. They don't care that countries in the third world are going to be poor and are going to be starved. There is a direct correlation between the amount of CO2 that you burn in a nation per head of population and the longevity and prosperity of the population. The more CO2 you burn, the longer you live. The less CO2 you burn, the more your children die young. These figures are absolutely absolutely plain. And it is an outrage that people like Holdren dare to say that they want to stop the world from burning CO2 when they must know that the consequence of that policy will be to do what is already happening, to kill people in the poorer countries who need, above all else, to use fossil fuels to lift themselves out of poverty, because it's only if you do lift yourself out of poverty and become reasonably prosperous as a population as a whole, not just a few elite in the middle, but the whole population becoming more prosperous, that, and only that, is what stabilizes the population and reduces the world's footprint on the planet and allows other creatures to live with us without being crowded out. So
but Lord Monckton,
that we go on burning fossil fuels.
Lord Monckton, I mean, the fraud is obvious where they were saying global cooling, then it was global warming. Now they say climate change. The oceans are going to turn into acid. I mean, they keep saying the science is all settled when they're all manifest quack frauds who all of them write books about planetary governments forcibly cutting off resources to kill the majority of us, drugging our water supplies to sterilize us. I mean, these people are Hitlerian. And as you know, being a man of letters and history, that Hitler got his ideas from the eugenicists in England and the United States, and that these are simply a bunch of little Hitlers masquerading as liberal bleeding hearts. They are murderous criminal control freaks.
Well, you put that even more strongly than I would, I think. I think that there is certainly an element of deliberate desire to control population by killing people in large numbers deliberately if necessary. I don't think they care about that as long as they're not among those who get killed. And I think we do have to try to persuade the third world countries when they go to Copenhagen that they should not sign this treaty. It's been very carefully tailored, this treaty, so that they think in the third world countries that they're going to make a lot of money out of it from the Western countries. And that's why many of them are going to say, well, you know, maybe there is this climate problem, maybe there isn't, but if we're going to make some money out of it, we'll pretend that there is. And, of course, that would be the most terrible thing for them to do, because they will be the first victim of this policy of making the world poorer. If you make the rich poorer, then you make the poor poorer still, and they will end up not just scratching around for a bare existence, they will be dying. That's already happening. And anybody who really cares about his fellow man in the poorer countries must always oppose this nonsense about not burning fossil fuels. Fossil fuels are harmless. CO2 is a naturally occurring trace gas. And to take up your point about ocean acidification, which you've just mentioned, that's their fallback position. We've now had 15 years with no global warming. We've had 9 years of rapid global cooling, though they've been doing their best to conceal that. In public, they've been saying, oh, but 8 of the last 10 years or 10 of the last 12 years have been the warmest on the record, without telling us the record only goes back 150 years. But then they say internally, oh, look, you know, Monckton is right. The temperatures really have been falling for 9 years, and we can't explain it, and what a travesty that is. So publicly, they're saying the science is settled, you're all doomed unless you close down the economies of the West, whereas privately they're saying to each other, we've got it wrong, that none of this adds up, and it's a travesty that we can't explain it. And so they now say ocean acidification is the problem. No, it isn't. There has been 20 times as much CO2 in the atmosphere as there is today. Let us go back, say, to the Cambrian era, 550 million years ago. Ah, yes, I remember it well. At that time, 20 times as much CO2 in the atmosphere as there is today. And that was the time when the calcite corals first came into existence. So all this bedwetting nonsense about the corals dissolving in 20 years, as Al Gore has been saying, because of ocean acidification, there is no scientific basis for that at all. It physically can't happen, because CO2 is only ranked 7th in the substances in the sea that could, in theory, affect the acid-base balance, but it, in fact, serves a role as the pivot or hinge around which all the others operate, and you can add as much CO2 to the ocean as you like, and it simply won't make any difference to the acid-base balance. The whole thing's nonsense.
Lord Monckton, going through a bunch of subjects, I want to play a clip in a moment. of Herman Van Rompuy, the new EU head of this expanded dictatorial EU. I'd like you to talk about the nature of the world government, because some liberals say, oh, a wonderful world government, peace, peace. This, as you say, is a dictatorial group of control freaks, the type of world they want to build. But is this not the Achilles heel? Because if we have Van Rompuy, and if we have Ban Ki-moon, the head of the UN, and all of these top New World Order globalists saying the global carbon tax, environmental, neo-feudalistic serf system is the key to our world government, exposing then their carbon tax as a fraud will kill 30 years of a program they've been building in the background. And why do you think they're now coming out of the closet and admitting world government?
I think they're admitting it simply because they were caught out. There's no doubt that they had hoped that treaty would stay on the website, and they hoped that nobody would see it. But they wanted to put it there so that they couldn't be accused afterwards of not having let the public know what they were going to do.